You stand in the middle of an open plain, the wind cutting across your face like a thin blade of ice. It's late afternoon. The sun is already sloping down on the horizon, painting the sky a pale orange, but the temperature plummets with each passing minute. We are somewhere on the Great Plains of North America hundreds of years ago, long before the existence of any roads, any cities, or any of the comforts that you know today. Around you, the dry grass sways violently, and the metallic smell of the snow about to fall is already in the air. You press your arms against your body, trying to contain the heat escaping you with each passing second. And realize, with a mixture of astonishment and despair, that there is absolutely no stone shelter, no brick walls, no house as you imagine. There is only one conical structure, made of long wooden logs leaning against each other, which are covered by animal hides that were sewn with great care. It is there that dozens of generations of indigenous people survived nights when the temperature plummeted to levels that today would seem impossible to endure without electricity, without heaters, without absolutely any of the modern tools you use, without even realizing it. And it is precisely here that the big question begins to form within you. How was it possible that a simple conical hut, made only of wood and leather, could keep people alive, warm, and even comfortable, during a time when the thermometer, if it existed at that time, would probably have registered many degrees below zero? How could a people, without industrial technology, without synthetic thermal insulation, without any of the inventions that we consider essential, today not only survive but thrive, raise families, tell stories, and sleep soundly amidst one of the most hostile climates on the continent? The answer you will discover along this journey is far more surprising than it seems at first glance, because what you are about to understand is not a story of luck or brute resistance to the cold. It is a story of extremely sophisticated engineering, tested and perfected over thousands of years. An engineering feat that in many aspects still intrigues engineers, architects, and scientists studying thermal. A school of Sassu efficiency. That simple structure you see before you, the so-called Tipi, used by various people such as the Lakota, the Sheen, and the Blackfoot, is actually one of the most elegant examples of elegant design ever created by humanity. You might imagine at first glance that that conical hut was just an improvised roof, something simple, almost primitive. But that initial perception is about to be completely dismantled because every detail of that structure, from the angle of the trunk's inclination to the way the hides were sewn and positioned, each element had a specific function, thought out and refined generation after generation, to solve one of the greatest challenges that nature can impose on the human body: extreme, prolonged, relentless cold. Let's delve into this story piece by piece, as if we were assembling a puzzle before your eyes. The first piece begins with the very shape of the structure. Observe again that cone before you. It is not a random shape. The conical shape allows the wind, even in its strongest gusts, to glide around the structure instead of hitting it directly, drastically reducing resistance and heat loss through convexity. It's like comparing a smooth, rounded stone being pushed by a river to a square, angular stone. The first slides smoothly, the second suffers the full impact of the current. The same principle applies to the icy wind of the plains hitting that cabin. While a building with straight walls would suffer the full impact of the gusts, the tip allows the wind to simply flow around its surface, minimizing internal heat loss. But the shape is only the beginning. The true genius is hidden in a detail that most people looking from the outside would never notice. The tip is actually composed of 2 layers of covering, not just one. There is the outer layer, made of carefully treated bison hides, stretched and stitched together, forming the visible surface you see against the orange sky. But inside, there is a second layer, an inner lining, usually also made of leather, positioned at a certain distance from the outer wall. And it is precisely this space between the two layers that creates one of the most intelligent thermal regulation mechanisms. It was one of the most intelligent ever developed by any human society before the industrial age. This space between the layers functions almost like a double coat. It is similar to how a modern thermos keeps liquids hot or cold for hours using an insulating layer of air between two walls. The air trapped between the outer covering and the inner lining of the tip creates a thermal barrier. This thermal barrier prevents the heat produced inside the hut from escaping quickly to the freezing outside environment. It was a habit. At the same time, the same layer of air prevents the extreme cold from outside. It prevents it from directly penetrating the space where families slept, ate, and lived. Now, imagine yourself entering this structure for the first time, lowering your head to pass through the low, narrow opening that serves as a door. Agaze. Instantly, you feel the temperature difference. Outside, the wind continues to bite relentlessly, but inside, there is something almost unbelievable. It is a feeling of coziness, of concentrated warmth, of real protection. In the center of the hut, a small fire crackles gently, its orange flames casting dancing shadows on the surrounding leather walls. The smoke rises slowly, and this is where another fundamental piece of this puzzle comes in. It is the ventilation system. If you look up at the top of the Tipi, you'll notice a carefully designed opening. It is adjustable via two movable Loesterabile laser roof Obovan bots, controlled by long wooden rods on the outside. The flaps could be adjusted according to the wind direction, allowing the smoke from the inner fire to escape efficiently. This prevented the outside wind from blowing back into the hut, bringing cold with it. This adjustable ventilation system was so precise that it allowed the fire to remain lit throughout the night, continuously heating the interior without suffering. The inhabitants were without smoke or letting the heat escape uncontrollably. You remain inside, seated near the fire, watching the smoke spiral upwards towards the opening. You begin to realize that every inch of that structure has been designed with impressive precision. But the thermal engineering of the Tipi doesn't end with the conical shape, the double-layered system, or the adjustable ventilation. There is still a fourth piece of this puzzle, perhaps the most surprising of all, hidden literally beneath your feet. Observe the floor. You might expect to find cold, bare earth exposed directly to the ice that forms just below the surface during winter nights. But that's not what you find. The ground inside the teepee was carefully covered with layers of bison hides, dry grass, and, in many cases, hand-woven mats. This covering wasn't just for comfort when sitting or sleeping. It served a crucial thermal function, insulating the human body from direct contact with the icy ground. It would otherwise continuously steal body heat even when close to the fire. It's the same principle with due proportions that you apply today when placing a thick rug on a cold floor or using a sleeping bag. Insulation is at the base when camping in extreme conditions. Un arantaro. The difference is that the indigenous peoples of the plains developed this knowledge centuries before any formal study of heat transfer by conduction. And here is the moment when the initial perception of that structure needs to be completely reformulated. This is reformulated because of what you imagined at the beginning of this journey. A simple, improvised hut now reveals itself as an integrated system of 4 mechanisms working together. The aerodynamic shape, it deflects and flexes with the wind. The double layer traps insulating air, and the adjustable ventilation controls smoke and temperature. And the ground insulation prevents heat loss from below. None of these elements would work alone with the same efficiency. It was the precise combination of these elements that transformed that structure into a true thermal refuge, efficient and durable. It is capable of maintaining internal temperatures often higher than the external environment, even during the worst snowstorms. But it would be a mistake to assume the structure's engineering was static, fixed, and immutable. On the contrary, it was profoundly adaptable. And this adaptability leads us to the next piece of this story: mobility. Unlike a stone or brick house, the teepee could be completely disassembled in a matter of minutes by experienced women of the community. They mastered every knot, every binding, every fold of leather, with a skill passed down from mother to daughter over generations. The long wooden poles, often made of pine or poplar, were tied into bundles and dragged by dogs, or later by horses. This allowed the entire community to relocate, following the bison herds that provided them with all necessary food, clothing, and essential building materials for their dwellings. This is the moment to make a contrast that will further broaden your understanding of what you are observing. Think for a moment of a European stone house from the same period. It was heavy, fixed, and built to last for centuries in a single location. It offers robust protection against the cold, yes, but at the total cost of mobility. Now compare that to the teepee, lightweight, collapsible, transportable, yet so capable of offering a comparable and in some aspects superior level. It provides a level of thermal protection, thanks to its aerodynamic design and double-layer system. While one society invested in permanence, the other invested in adaptive intelligence. This created a solution that directly responded to the demands of a nomadic way of life, dependent on constant movement in search of resources. This contrast deepens even further when you observe another indigenous group, geographically distant but facing equally severe climatic challenges. The Arctic peoples, such as the Inuit, developed the igloo, a completely different structure made of compacted snow blocks. While the teepee used wood, leather, and mobility as its weapons against the cold, the igloo used the snow itself. A material that at first glance seems absurd for thermal protection, but which in fact contains small air pockets in its crystal structure, functioning as a natural insulator almost as efficient as the synthetic materials used today in high-performance winter clothing. As in high-performance winter clothing, these are two radically different solutions, developed by different peoples in different environments. But they are united by the same fundamental principle: using what nature offers with extreme intelligence to overcome extreme cold. Return to the plane where you are, to the Tipi that shelters the family around you. It is also important to understand the human role within this engineering. No structure, however well designed, functioned alone. It was the accumulated knowledge, transmitted orally from generation to generation, that guaranteed the perfect functioning of each element. The women knew exactly how to treat bison hides to make them waterproof and flexible at the same time. The elders taught the children how to adjust the ventilation flaps as the wind direction changed during the night. There was a profound collective knowledge about observing nature, about reading the sky, about anticipating storms. This knowledge allowed the community to prepare in advance for the harshest nights, no boughs or light in the sun. And it is precisely here that the narrative requires a pause to recognize something important, something we cannot romanticize. Despite all that brilliant engineering, life within those frozen plains wasn't easy, nor comfortable in the way you understand comfort today. There were nights when the cold still penetrated, causing suffering, especially for the elderly, the young, and the physically weak. Cold-related illnesses existed. Hunger, when bison hunting failed, made bodies more vulnerable to hypothermia. Unexpected snowstorms could completely isolate a community, cutting off access to firewood, food, and outside help. The teepee's engineering was extraordinary, but it wasn't magic. It didn't eliminate the real risks of living in one of the most unforgiving climates on the American continent. Surviving there required not only technology, but physical resilience and constant learning, and a deep sense of community where each person depended on the collective strength of the group to get through the harshest winter months. When you finally leave the cabin the next morning and watch the sun rise over the frost-covered plain, something inside you has already changed. You no longer see that conical structure as a simple, primitive hut. You see a system of thermal engineering refined over thousands of years, tested by entire generations. These generations had no margin for error, because each poorly calculated winter meant lives lost fast. You understand now that the conical shape, the double layer of leather, the adjustable ventilation, and the insulation from the ground were not decorative details. They were survival solutions created by careful observation of nature and perfected through accumulated experience. This accumulated experience was transmitted orally from one generation to the next without any written manual or mathematical formula, only living, practical knowledge, tested by the human body itself, exposed to extreme cold. And that is precisely the universal insight that this story leaves you with far beyond the frozen plains of centuries ago. Human intelligence has never depended exclusively on advanced technology or abundant resources. It has always depended, above all, on careful observation and constant adaptation, and a deep understanding of how to work in harmony with the environment instead of simply trying to dominate it by force. The indigenous peoples of the plains did not overcome the extreme cold by building ever thicker walls or burning ever more wood. They overcame it by deeply understanding how the wind behaves, how air retains heat, how the human body loses temperature, and transforming this understanding into an elegant, lightweight, mobile, and extremely efficient structure. Today, centuries later, engineers and architects studying energy efficiency and sustainable design still look to structures like the Tipi for inspiration in principles that modern technology, with all its sophistication, often forgets. It forgets the importance of aerodynamic form, insulation through layers of air-controlled, ventilation, and the intelligent use of materials available in the environment itself. There is something profoundly human in this continuity, in this invisible thread that connects the ancestral knowledge developed on the frozen plains to the current search for sustainable solutions in the face of climate change the world is facing. Now, in the end, the lesson that remains is not just about how to protect oneself from the cold. It is about how human survival in any era has always been the result of collective intelligence, patient observation, and the ability to adapt to extreme challenges. That conical hut, seemingly simple at first glance, holds within it centuries of learning, error, adjustment, and refinement, a silent testament to the fact that human beings, even without industrial technology, have always been capable of building brilliant solutions when confronted with the relentless force of nature. If this journey through the frozen plains has made, did you see the intelligence of the indigenous peoples of the Americas in a new light? Leave a comment telling us which detail of the igloo's engineering surprised you the most. Don't forget to like this video to support this work and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next discoveries about stories that reveal human ingenuity hidden in the least expected places. And if you want to continue this journey through the extreme cold, also watch the video about how the peoples of the Arctic survived inside igloos, an equally surprising story that is linked right here on the screen.